Hello, everybody. My name is Mike. Welcome to my very first YouTube video, and I hope this thing comes out. I'm new to YouTube. I'm not sure what ringing bells and subscribing means, so if you know, let your conscience be your guide. Before we go into it, we've got a lot of records to review today. I want to give a special thanks, a special shout out to the person who inspired me to even attempt to make a YouTube video. He goes by the name of The Vinyl Geek, and his YouTube site is called Vinyl Rewind, and The Vinyl Geek is completely entertaining and certainly shows a true love for vinyl. So if you're into vinyl, even a little bit, may I recommend The Vinyl Geek at Vinyl Rewind. So thank you, Vinyl Geek, for the inspiration. What you are looking at right now is an original white label DJ copy of Donkey Serenade by the Orioles of the Jubilee record label. The Orioles later went on to become Sonny Till and the Orioles, as in You Saw Me Crying in the Chapel, and went on to fame and fortune. This is an early DJ copy from 1949, and I have several of the white label Jubilees for one particular interesting reason. Before the great impresario named Deborah Chesler took over their national management of the Orioles, their founding manager and first attempt to get them recorded, their founding manager was my father. Yes, indeed, absolutely true. And that's why I have a stack of these. So I just thought it'd be interesting if you saw a white label Jubilee 78. You've probably never seen one before. And unless I make another video, you may never see another one again. The object of this session with you, I'm going to be reviewing records, 78s, a few 45s, LPs, on labels that I've never seen before or since, by artists that I've never heard of before or since. What are we not going to be reviewing? Well, let's start off with this. We're not going to... Oh, is this the Beatles' White Album? Hey, no, it's not. It is the Christmas at Sparrows Point High School in Baltimore, Maryland, from 1964. And this is what we will call a private pressing record that was made in limited quality, or quantity rather, and probably quality as well, to be distributed to the hopeful souls of that gala event so long ago. And again, this is a private pressing, so not available to the public. We will be reviewing records that are only available commercially that I have found on labels I've never heard of before or since, by artists I've never heard of before or since. These are records that anybody could have bought in any record shop or record department in any department store. You, me, your Uncle Dave, your Aunt Bertha, Grandma Sally, anybody. So we will not be reviewing... Whoop, let me turn it over to the A side. We will not be reviewing promo copies that went to radio stations. Here is My Boy Lollipop by Millie Small on the Smash label, and this was, again, a promo white label copy. And I do understand that Millie Small at one time was under the management of Brian Epstein, so good for her. We are also not going to be reviewing mystery promo records such as this. This is RCA, this is early 50s, record review, coming attractions. Doesn't even have an artist's name or title on it. It just says release 50/50, whatever that means. So we will not be reviewing that type. Here's another one that was, again, not commercially available, promo, from the early 50s. Again, this was by a singer named Ken Marvin, country music song called How About a Date, Baby? And this was on the RCA Record Review, or Preview, Coming Attractions. So we will not be reviewing that type of record. We will not be reviewing misprints and mislabeling. For example, here is on Swan with Don't Drop Out, a song called Mr. Sandman by Al Alberts. This is a mispressing. When you put the needle on, it actually plays She Loves You in German by the Beatles. No, it doesn't. Psych. I wish it did. But for our review today, we're not going to be getting into any type of misprints or mislabeling. We're also not going to be looking at acetates. Here is an acetate of I Can't Put It in Words by the Jolly Jacks, featuring Herman Hill, and other Hill siblings were a part of the group. And this is from the Audio Services Company in Baltimore. Why do I have this? My father was also a producer and produced this at Audio Services, hopefully trying to get it to a major label, which did not happen. So if you ever look up the discography of the Jolly Jacks, you'll see quite a few titles. You will not see I Can't Put It in Words. It was never sold to a label. So for my money, this is the only copy on the planet. And I have it. Yay. Okay. We will not be reviewing either radio station promotional records that came to radio stations from various companies to try to sell their programming. This is from October 1973. This is October is Country Music Month by the Country Music Association, trying to plug their singers and their programming specials. You can't buy this regionally or locally, so we're going to delete that type. Here's another one also very similar. This is from Real Rhythm Productions, and this is called The Rockin' 60s. Yeah, baby! And again, you could not have bought this, so we're not going to review this type of record. Also, we're not going to be reviewing double-sided reissues. For example, here is Runaround Sue by Dion on the Laurie label. And on the flip side, I guess he inherited the Belmonts. For now, it's Dion and the Belmonts. And a great, great song, by the way, called I Wonder Why. And so we will not be reviewing double-sided reissues, no matter how obscure. And here's another one sample of that. This is by Major Lance, an epic called And on the flip side of this double-sided reissue is The Monkey Time. So we will not be reviewing records of that nature. We will not be reviewing homemade records. For example, this is a homemade record on the Recordio disc label, and this was pressed in somebody's house, and you'll notice that has two holes in it. The center hole was for the main spindle. They only did it at 78 RPM. The second hole was for a secondary small short spindle to hold the record in place as the cutting needle bore down and etched the grooves into the surface. So again, homemade recordings we will not be reviewing. Here's another of that same type, and this is a duo disc. Duo disc was very popular in the 40s. Again, it has two holes in it, and these were popular in booths that you would see in train stations and airports, I guess, where you could go in for the booth and for 25 cents, you could record a message and mail it off to the folks back home to let them know you're still alive. And I can assure you the tonal quality is dismal. Now, to the meat of the issue, let us get into some one-hit wonders on one-hit labels, and that's coming up next. To begin the countdown now, on 45s, here is a record by a group, never heard of them before or since, on a label I've never heard of before or since. This is a group called The Rogues, and it is on the Peyton record label. And I like the little blurb in the corner here. It says this record was recorded in New England, as if that would have some impact on the quality of the performance or the quality of the recording. I can assure you it does not. The song is called Oh No, and it could be Yoko Oh No. It's really, really bad. So goodbye for the Rogues. Okay. Here's another song. This one's really, really cool, actually. And this is called The Mummy's Bracelet by Lee Ross. Never heard of him before or since. On the Ray record label. And it's a pretty cool song. Actually, the video of this song being played is on YouTube. The Mummy's Bracelet by Lee Ross on Ray Records. Last night in the museum, they were searching for a trace of the thief who stole the mummy's bracelet from its case. And now tonight the mummy's curse is on his thieving head. For the mummies come to life, awakened from the dead. Cool song. The Mummy's Bracelet. Here is a colored vinyl, one of a kind. This is called The Press Conference by some group or individual called the Newshounds. And this is a comedy record, actually. It was supposed to be a comedy record. And this is a parody of a press conference with cut-in segments from other songs that were popular in the day. Very much like Buchanan and Goodman's Flying Saucer records. On the Ray Gun record label. And you'll notice here it says Side 2. Pray tell, what's on the other side? Nothing. No label, no grooves, no nothing on Ray Gun. Here's another colored vinyl. And this I've had, for many, many a year, if I can get it to stand up correctly. Well, maybe it doesn't want to. I'll hold it. Red vinyl, this is called I Cried Last Night by Bill Heyman and his orchestra on the Sittin' In With record label. And I dare say, as it rolls away, that's a one-hit wonder, if it was a hit, on Sittin' In With, a one-time label. Here's another one of a kind, I do believe. This is Reg Owens and his orchestra. This was a moderate hit called Manhattan Spiritual on the Palette record label, as in an artist's palette. Therefore, the nickname Color in Music. A one of a kind. Okay. Here's another record label with a group, a one-hit, if it was a hit, wonder. And this is kind of a string band on the Media record label. And pardon the movement here, because I've never done this before, and I don't want to screw it up too bad. Okay, there we go. And this is the Media record label. And it's a recording of that all-time favorite Southern classic, Alabama Jubilee. Hail, hail, the gang's all here at the Alabama Jubilee. And my rendition is a lot better than the record itself. Okay? This was a big hit, and one of my favorites, maybe yours as well. This was by a duo named Skip and Flip, and it was called It Was I, and it was a pretty good hit. And oldies aficionados really like this song too, because it really kind of spells out a period of time of innocence and brokenheartedness without revenge. It Was I, Skip and Flip, only thing I've ever seen by them, and the only thing I've ever seen on the Brent record label. Okay? Next, another moderate hit. This is on the Marmaduke record label. Again, we have some LPs coming up shortly, but Marmaduke, this was a instrumental hit by a person or a group called the Electric Indian, and it was called Kemo Sabe, and pretty good instrumental. Some of you may know it, but it was the only thing I've ever seen by the Electric Indian on the oddly named Marmaduke record label. Here's one you've probably never seen before. This is called Silence by Melinda Scott on the Jackie Jordan Enterprise label. It has a BMI ASCAP denomination on it, the speed of it, the time of it. And what's interesting about this record is it is absolutely silent. There's nothing on it. No, there's grooves, and you put the needle down, and all you get is several minutes of silence. Come on, camera, stay still. Okay, don't move. Okay. Except for the very end of each side, a voice comes on and says, "You've been listening to silence. For more silence, turn the record over." Melinda Scott and Jackie Jordan, best of luck to you in obscurity land. This one is one of my top 25 rock and roll favorites of all time, Jerry Granahan, No Chemise Please, on the Sunbeam record label. I've never seen another thing by Jerry Granahan, and I've never seen anything else on the Sunbeam record label. Although I do understand Jerry Granahan later performed with a group called Dickie Doo and the Don'ts, and then later than that performed with a group called the New Tornadoes, who had one hit, and it was called Philadelphia, USA, and it was like a marching song, like the Mummers coming down Main Street, Philadelphia, during a Thanksgiving Day parade. The flip side of that was called Magic Record, and that's available to see and hear on YouTube. Magic Record by the New Tornadoes. When you're all alone and lonely and you don't know what to do, just play the Magic Record and make all your dreams come true. I wish it was that easy. Okay. Here's another song. This was a big hit in its time, but the only song I've ever heard of by the group called the Pyramids, and the only thing I've ever seen on the Best record label. The Pyramids had their hit song instrumental called Penetration. Many of you oldie collectors probably know of it. I also understand the Pyramids did appear in one of the Beach movies with Annette Funicello and Frankie Avalon. They were filmed performing on stage at the club where the Beach bums hung out, and they were wearing Beatle wigs. Right in the middle of their performance, the wigs flew off to reveal that they were all bald-headed, clean-shaven like Yul Brynner, and that was the claim to fame of the Pyramids. Okay? Here's another obscure label, an obscure individual. This is George McKelvey on the American Gramophone label, which I've never seen before or since. And this was supposed to be a comedy song of a sort called My Radiation Baby. And it's not funny. My Radiation Baby, you're my teenage fallout queen. not funny. And wherever George McKelvey is, maybe he's now playing with the pyramids in that big recording booth in the sky. Here's another no-hit, one of a kind. Even though the label is white, this is not a promo copy. This was called, the title is Misunderstood by Jesse Aaron on the Capri label. And I guess whoever forked over the money to have this record recorded and pressed was certainly misunderstood as to the possibility of having a hit with such a turkey. Goodbye, Jesse Aaron. Okay. Here's another, I've never heard of it before or since. This is called Brother Please by a singer named Sonny Craver on the Celestial record label. And this is from, I believe, 1978, I think it says. And it is extraordinarily racially biased and offensive. And I won't even show you the title of the other side. That's how bad it is. So apparently it never got a lot of airplay. And goodbye, Sonny Craver. You deserve what you got, obscurity. This was a moderate hit on the GRT label. Now, I've seen GRT before, but only in the form of LPs. But this was a kind of a minor tongue-in-cheek song called, that's the wrong side, duh. Wait a minute, called Telephone Man by Mary Wilson. And again, sexual innuendo, and probably did not get a whole lot of airplay, although it was a moderate hit by Mary Wilson. And such lyrics as, "Hey baby, I'm your telephone man. Where do you want your phone? I'll put it in the kitchen. I'll put it where I can." And so, Mary Wilson, you had your day in the sun. Here's another obscurity here. This is the James Brown melody, or medley rather, by the Catholics on the Duke City record label, produced by Top Notch Music, ASCAP. And whoever they were, I would assume they are Catholic. And here, my friends, is what they look like. Fix the camera. Here is an obscure children's record on the Treasure Records label. And this is really obnoxious. It's "Lazy Mary, will you get up? Will you get up? Will you get up? Hey, lady!" It's awful, but maybe children enjoyed it to some degree. Here's another obscure child's record label. This is Kittyland Small Gems, and this is the saga of Tiny Harmonica, a very lonely little harmonica that runs away from Musicland to try to find his way to Harmonica Land to get some tutelage so he can build up his chops enough to play with a full-fledged, bona fide orchestra. Boring. Tiny Harmonica. Here's another child's label. This is a 78, and this is the Star Bright Classics label in red vinyl. And this is, what is this called? It's, the label's scratched out. Oh, Jack and the Beanstalk. And anyway, not only is it a record, it's classified as a toy. And last of the 7-inchers here, this is Chicken Little. And Henny Penny said that Chicken Little said that Henny Penny said that obnoxious verse on the Bobolink record label. Okay, so enough of the 45s, enough of the little 7-inchers. Let's get into some LP. Okay, it's LP time. And again, obscure artists, never heard of them before or since, on labels I've never heard of before or since. This is called A Night with Ava, and you may see on here it says, not for airplay. It's one of those adult nightclub, smutty, innuendo-filled, bawdy nightclub acts that she thinks she's really cute. She actually is pretty bad. But Ava Williams, wherever you are now, hello and goodbye. And this was on the Borderline Falling record label. Let's get that back up. On the Borderline label. And if you've never seen it before, you'll never see it again. Before, when we were looking at 45s and 7-inchers, I mentioned that there was a moderate hit by a group called Reg Owens and his orchestra called Manhattan Spiritual on the Palette record label. I mentioned it's the only Palette record I've ever seen. Well, guess what? I lied. Here is the very rare LP version of Manhattan Spiritual and big band sounds of the Palette record label. And that label looks just like this. Now, for my money, the greatest American lyricist of all time was Johnny Mercer. Thousands of songs, you probably have heard them over and over and over. Laura, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, and the Atchison, Topeka, and the Santa Fe. Anyway, this is an obscure record of Johnny Mercer singing his own hits, and this is on the Jupiter record label, which looks just like this. For you fans of morality, here is a recording by thespians from long ago of the longest-running play in American history called The Drunkard. It is the only copy I've ever seen of this, and the only thing I've ever seen on the audio drama record label. And here is that sparkling example of that label as well. Audio drama. Ask for it by name. Hey, did you ever want to be a ventriloquist? Well, play this record and you will change your mind in a big, big hurry. This is Laugh and Learn, Lessons in Ventriloquism by the great Edgar Bergen, and featuring his dummies, Charlie McCarthy, and of course the long-forgotten, oh, I'm Mortimer Snerd, Mr. Bergen. And this is on the Juro record label. Again, never heard of it before or since. But, since you ask, this is the Juro record label. Say, everybody, let's fall in love with June Hutton. Love songs to really make you sick. Really, it's MTV, music to make you vomit. And this was a one-of-a-kind June Hutton, whoever she was, on the Zenith record label. An example of which is this obscure and unremarkable. Here's a very obscure but very cool comedy record called All About Cleopatra. And this came out right around the time that Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton were filming the so-called epic Cleopatra. And the headlines talked more about their affairs and their rendezvous than the actual movie itself. So it got a lot of headlines for all the wrong reasons. And this is All About Cleopatra. And now you may notice someone here that looks like Jerry Lewis. Well, it's not Jerry Lewis. It's an imitator whose name is Sammy Petrillo. And Sammy Petrillo went on to do Jerry Lewis's act, despite the fact that Jerry Lewis kept suing him. He continued to do it. And funny, yeah, it's okay, but you had to have been around in 1962 or 63 to appreciate the subtleties of that humor. This is on the Topical record label, and here is that example for you right here. Topical Records, all about Cleopatra. All right, now we can't leave out the kiddies. This is the Rhythm Record Company Physical Fitness for Primary Children. So if you're the proud parent of a secondary child, I guess they cannot participate in this grueling boot camp type exercise for the kids. This is a 10-inch record. What I like most about it, it's in colored vinyl. It's red, and it is on that obscure label. Here's another 10-incher, and this was a one-hit wonder for Ira Wright and his fabulous orchestra. This is the score from the movie Around the World in 80 Days, 10-inch stereophonic on the Rondolet record label. Now, I've heard of Rondo 12-inch, maybe because this is 10-inch, it's Rondolet. And this is the example of the Rondolet label. And I've played this, and it could be Rondo Let It Be. Rondolet. Hey, we can't forget 16 RPM. This is a listening library label. Never heard of it before or since. And this is a complete reading on multiple discs of Jules Verne's Around the World in 80 Days. Fortunately, I have a player that will play 16 RPM. I've listened to it. It will put you snoring, sleeping in a matter of minutes. It's a bigger pill than Sominex. You'll fall asleep and wish you hadn't played it. Anyway, listening library, 16 RPM, Jules Verne's complete novel, Around the World in 80 Days. Here is a very odd album called Jerome Kern Melodies, including the ever-popular Smoke It's in Your Eyes, and another little ditty called Yesterday, obviously not the Paul McCartney version of that. What's interesting about this record is not the cover itself, but the actual record label. Record labels during this period had raised centers called shoulders. So if you had an automatic turntable, you could stack the records up, and when the record fell, the raised area of the label called a shoulder, would meet the one below it, and the grooves wouldn't touch. This one has no shoulders at all. It's as flat as a pancake on the rather bizarre Plymouth record label. No shoulders, no shoes, no shirts, no shoulders. Here's a little obscure extra for you. This is my favorite stereo demonstration album of all time, called Sounds in Space, on the RCA Victor label in Living Stereo. And this was a stereo demonstration record, and it's really cool. It's got all kinds of music on it, and narration, and sound effects. So if you ever find a copy of this cheap, you might want to try it out. And if you like it, great. You don't like it, don't blame me. This is the label, RCA, the classic dog vomiting into a gramophone, label in Living Stereo. For you big band fans, you may recognize the name Harry Babbitt. Harry Babbitt was the lead singer with a orchestra that is now absolutely obscure, but in its day, the late 30s and 40s of the big band era, outsold more records, or sold more records than Benny Goodman and the Dorsey Brothers and Glenn Miller and all of that. But a big band leader whose name is almost forgotten completely today, named Kay Kyser. And Harry Babbitt was the lead singer for the Kay Kyser Band. And for my money, he was as good a crooner as any of those more popular ones and names that come to mind, Bing Crosby and so on. When the big band era came to an end, Harry Babbitt started to his own orchestra to continue the legacy of the big band era. And this was the only album I've ever seen, or record I've ever seen, by Harry Babbitt and his orchestra. And this is on the Ralph's record label. Yes, Ralph's. Now, it was made in California, and I know that in California there's a Ralph's supermarket chain. So maybe this was only sold at Ralph's Markets. Who knows? But this is Ralph's Records, and above it says Super Hits. Pretty good record, too. Now, watch out. It's Jimmy Dean. I'm just a country boy. And, of course, everybody knows Jimmy Dean had his own TV show, variety show, and famous, of course, for his sausage. And he made a lot of records, a lot of albums for Columbia Records. This is the only one I've ever seen on the MVM label, which stands for Mount Vernon Music. Whoever they were, Jimmy Dean, I'm just a country boy. And here is the obscure Mount Vernon Music record label for your edification. Back in the 1920s, in New York, when neighborhoods were more segregated than they are right now, in the Jewish community, there was a very, very popular singer of Yiddish songs named Aaron Lebedev. And his big hit was Romania, Romania, and other Yiddish theater favorites. Now, I'm not Jewish, and I don't speak Yiddish, so only take my word for it that this is a bizarre and obscure album. And if you listen to the songs in Yiddish, just interpret the lyrics as musical notes themselves, and you might find it very entertaining, but very obscure to find this record. Aaron Lebedev sings Romania, Romania, and this is on the Collectors Guild record label. And here is what that looks like for your viewing pleasure. Back in the days of JFK, there were quite a number of parody records that came out imitating his voice and his family and Jackie and all of that. And if you were around, you may have seen, although I doubt it, this parody of the Kennedy administration called My Son the President, a musical satire featuring the one and only Christopher Weeks. Who? Christopher Weeks and Fran Stacy, the beloved Fran Stacy. This is a cash-in record to take advantage of the multi-million selling major hit for Cadence Records called The First Family by Vaughn Meader. This is a musical parody of country music on the Clan record label, and I'll almost bet you've never seen this before. And this is the Clan record label. Hey, 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 it's Dennis Day of the Jack Benny show fame. And it says right there, if you don't believe it, it's written right there, America's favorite Irish tenor. Debatable, of course. And I have several Dennis Day albums. I like them a little bit. And but most of those are on major labels. This is the one and only label I've ever seen for Glendale Records. And so obscurity, here it is, Glendale Records. So by this time, if I haven't put you to sleep with boredom, these are honorable mentions. This is Phil Silvers with Nelson Riddle and the orchestra, a little epic called Swinging Brass on Columbia Records. And this, to me, is the coolest record cover jacket ever with Phil Silvers. My favorite album cover ever with a male, is Elvis's Golden Records. This is the original mono RCA Victor, and just that snarl, that look, that, hey, you want a piece of me kind of look on Elvis, and the great songs that are on this record has made this one my favorite, and my favorite male recording artist cover ever. Well, how about the ladies? This is my favorite album cover featuring a young lady. And this is Martin Denny's great Quiet Village LP from years and years ago on the Liberty record label. And here is the young lady who I went steady with in my dreams. And this is the great album Quiet Village by Martin Denny. Now, my favorite album cover of all times by a group of musicians. It is the Beatles' Magical Mystery Tour. Love this cover, love the booklet, love the music, and it is my favorite group album cover ever. For every good, there is evil. This is the ugliest album cover I have ever seen, and this is Papa John Gordy, the father, not the mother, but the father of Honky Tonk. And would you buy a record with a face like that? I don't think so. Bizarre. Very, very bizarre. And Papa John Gordy, wherever you are, hope you're enjoying your eternity in obscurity land. And now for my favorite album cover of any kind ever. Let's reveal a record you probably have never seen before. This is Around the World in Hi-Fi on Epix Records. And I'll try to get this little light out of here a little bit. Anyway, this record label and album cover I found to be very inspirational to get me to get off the couch and do some traveling. This is an amazing photo because this is the Cunard Line, one of their ships, and you can't really see it on video, but every little detail is there. People walking about and the island behind it and the, I guess, Chinese junks, you would call them. And this was very inspirational to get me to do traveling. And as a result of this album cover, which I still cherish to this day, I've been to 31 countries. And it's my favorite album cover ever. Here is the label from that same album, Around the World in Hi-Fi, made before stereo was invented, I guess. And you'll notice on the Epic record label, these dashes, these lines that go around the label, these actually had a function for audio files. When you put the record on, you could test the exact speed of your turntable if you were to shine a strobe light on the outer rim of the label. And of course, everybody has a strobe light. But if the revolving lines became a solid line, you know that your turntable was moving exactly at 33 1/3 RPM. Again, for audio files way back when, before there was digital calibration and all that good stuff we know now that there was not a speck of back then. And finally, yay, he's almost done, yay! Finally, bizarre little record I thought was worth showing. This is a standard size CD, obviously. This was a record made by the Ford Motor Company under their subdivision called Philco. And this was, I think, called a hip pocket record or something like that. And they were made to be played only on little players that were made by the Philco company, which obviously they took a big bath on it. They because I've never seen one of the players that'll play this, although it will play on a standard turntable. Terrible fidelity, and this happens to be a rendition of Sock It To Me Baby, along with Jenny Takes a Ride by Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels. So that's a little obscure, bizarre piece of trivia for you. And finally, last but not least, I wanted to share this with you as well. This is on the CBS Coronet record label from New Zealand. It happens to be a song from a movie in the 50s called Tammy, starring Debbie Reynolds. And she actually sang a hit version of it. Tammy, Tammy's in love. Oh, Vodio do. And anyway, the reason I'm showing you this is the only record I have ever seen with an octagon label. Interesting. Anyway, that's about it for me. I thank you for your time watching this. Hope you enjoyed it. And again, I want to pay special thanks to the Vinyl Geek over at Vinyl Rewind for his soul and inspiration and his really cool hairdo. And everybody take care, stay safe, and rock on. Bye-bye.